In today's video, we talk about how to get your mind in the right spot when you get ready for that next swim. Or maybe you've had that disappointing swim that you weren't ready for. How can you get your head back in the game? I'll give you tips and tricks on how to improve on all aspects of your race, both for the athlete and for the coach. I'm Chris, and I am the host of Between the Laps, and I want to thank you for joining me today. So, you've just had one of the most devastating swims of your life. So what do? What does your coach say? How do they deal with all this emotion, all this anger and frustration? You've been working your butt off for months, maybe even years, to try to get that time or that place. Maybe you're trying for Olympic trials, but for some reason, it just didn't click. So what can a coach or what can an athlete do? Well, from a coaching perspective, one of the things I've always tried to do with my swimmers is first, give them a little bit of space. Have them go down to the cool down pool, if there is a cool down pool. Swim it out. Start off with them getting all their frustrations out. Then have them come back and talk to them. No matter what else is going on, no matter who else is swimming, spend a little bit of extra time with that swimmer. There's also the opportunity earlier on in the process, weeks, months, years beforehand. Give them the tools to deal with a poor swim. So what kind of tools would you use? Well, there's lots of great things. You could do visualization. Find a way, work with them on the pool deck. Take them out of the water. Take them out of the situation that they're in. Have them sit with their eyes closed. Remove distractions. Teach them how to relax their minds, relax their bodies. Focus on their breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. I know it sounds kind of hippie-ish and different things, but it really does work. If you give your athletes the tools up front, they can really do amazing things when they're in the water and before a race. Another option is to talk to them. Talk about goal setting. Talk to them about frustrations. Figure out those conversations. Understand the way that your athlete really sort of ticks. It means you have to spend a little bit more time with them. Ask questions. Engage with them. Go beyond just coach-athlete situations. Understand what they're into. Maybe they love Roblox or Minecraft. Or maybe they're a little bit more internal into themselves and like things like music and poetry. By finding out those interests, you can dive into those interests and work with that when you're talking to your athletes. Maybe it's in how you show a particular drill or I explain a situation to them. Maybe you can relate. Maybe there was a movie that you both like. You could talk about a situation where the characters had some disappointment. Bring it, internalize each of those moments with your athlete. Show empathy. That's another great one. Understand that your swimmer is going through a very tough time and they may not have the words to express what happened. But maybe you do. As a coach, you probably experienced something similar. So take those experiences that you have and use them to help guide your athlete. You remember, you are the coach. You're here to guide your athlete. That's what your job is. You are like a mentor, a guide, the responsible adult. Even if it's a master swimmer, you are taking ownership of that experience. So let's dive a little deeper into what kind of things do you talk to your athlete about on a disappointment point swim? First, what I like to do is I like to have them reflect. I want them to think about what didn't connect in that swim. Have them take a moment, take me through everything that was going on in the water. Maybe it was something immediately off of the dive. Maybe it was something with the way their strokes felt. Maybe their body just didn't feel quite right. Maybe it was the turn. Maybe they missed it. Maybe their feet slipped. Maybe they just had a moment where they spaced out. There's so many reasons, but you have to have your athletes engage. That's where the learning comes in. Because even a failure in the water still can be a success. That is what you're looking for. Turn those failures into success. By turning it into success, your athlete's going to learn, they're going to get better, they're going to get that next experience in the right way. This is the kind of thinking you need to have when you're working with your athletes. It's not a failure and yelling at them. It's about working with them, talking to them, figuring out how to turn this into a learning experience. What else can you do? You can talk to them about what you saw in the water. Maybe you are lucky enough to film it. Then you can both look back at that footage and say, look, this is not what we were working on. What happened here? And talk about particular moments in that race that didn't quite work. You'd be amazed at the awe and the understanding that comes across an athlete's face when they can see exactly what possibly went wrong. Then what do you do with all this information? You don't just leave it at the swim meet, but you also don't spend too much time just thinking about it and reminiscing over it. Because the athlete probably has more swims that particular day. They might have to do 2, 3, 5 more swims. So you have to work through that disappointment. Turn that disappointment into that learning experience and then move on. You start focusing on the next race. You think about, how can we get into the mental state that's going to get you into a successful swim on this next race? You don't want to reflect back on the swim that you just had. You want to use those moments in practice in the upcoming weeks and say, hey, we could work on. But in that moment at that swim meet or at that event, you want to move on to that next event. You want to talk to your athletes, get them in the right mindset. Figure out what is going to get them to have a great swim in that next one. You got to move on from that disappointment. You got to think about that next swim. Maybe it's having them now go off and do some visualization. Have them play back what their next swim is going to look like over and over in their head. Maybe it's them sitting off in the corner without their friends, putting a towel over their heads, closing their eyes, and just thinking about that next swim. The mind is such a powerful tool, especially in swimming. We think about it as being very physical. You get in, you move your muscles, and you move all your body parts. But the mind is what can really make or break a race. So if you can get your swimmer's head in the right spot, even if they've had a disappointing swim, they can move on. They can get to that really awesome swim in that next race. You could also have them go listen to some of their favorite music that pumps them up, gets them ready. Maybe after you talk to them, maybe it's about sending them back into the warm-up pool and have them work on a few different techniques. Maybe you've talked about certain strategies that you want to implement. Maybe it's talking about having a greater pull, grabbing that water, reaching, Maybe their goal is taking 11 strokes per 25. Have them go work on that. Work on some distance per stroke before their next race, just to warm up their muscles again and get their head in the right spot. Maybe it's just loosening up the legs. Maybe we're talking about fast kicks with slow arms. That's one of the objectives for the next race. Work on these strategies. You should have these strategies before you ever get to your event. These are things that you should be working on months, years, weeks before. You don't want to do it day of. Don't introduce something that your swimmer is going to go, huh? We've never talked about this. Everything you work on from a strategy perspective with your swimmer, and that's in their head, should have been worked on months beforehand. If you're a summer swimmer, maybe that's the start of the season. Thinking about the dive. And then every time you have a swim, you need to think about one aspect of the dive. Maybe it's the pull, maybe it's the kick, maybe it's just breathing in general. But you take those moments and you build on them so that when you get to the big event, that is already on their mind. You're just using trigger words to remind them what they need to work on. That is what you're looking for. You're looking for those triggers. Remind your swimmers what that next moment is, what you guys have been talking about forever. And then if it doesn't work out, you use that. You don't think of it as a failure. You use it as an opportunity to learn and get better, stronger mentally for that next race. If you've enjoyed the content that you've seen today, please hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll be sharing more videos soon. Peace.